Hello, Cy Shackelford here again. Today, I want to talk with you about a major continuity issue in comics that I'd like to unravel for you. It's been tangled up for far too long, but today, we finally clear things up. Now, some of you might be confused about the history between the Eternals, Marvel Boy, the Crusader, and Quasar. It's chock full of retcons, but here we go with an explanation. The Marvel Boy, whose real name is Bob Grayson, he first appeared in the 1950s, long before Marvel Comics ever came into being. Here's his backstory. Bob Grayson's father, Horace, was a German rocket scientist in the 1930s. Opposed to the Nazi Party, especially after they killed his Jewish wife and his daughter, Horace decided to flee the planet to avoid World War II. While living in America, he received a signal from a colony on Uranus about how to build a rocket ship and proceeded from there. Once he completed his rocket ship, he flew himself and his American-born infant son Bob there. Now, the Uranian colony, they welcomed Horace and his son with open arms, and later, when Bob was a teenager, they sent him back to Earth as their ambassador, Marvel Boy. And to aid him, they gave him a telepathic headband and some solar-powered wristbands. Missing since the Atlas Comics era, Marvel Boy returned in the modern Marvel era as the Crusader in Fantastic Four Volume 1, issues 164 through 165, released in November through December of 1975. Supposedly, he needed a bank loan to fund the equipment necessary to fly back to Uranus. Delayed, he finally arrived on Uranus to find that a natural disaster had shattered the biodome that housed the colonists, killing his father and all the colonists in the process. Insane with grief, he returned to Earth as the Crusader to take revenge on the bank that denied him his loans. The wristbands that he was wearing at the time, which even then were described as a new and improved versions of the bands that he wore as Marvel Boy, overloaded and killed him, disintegrating him but leaving just the wristbands behind. After the Crusader's death, certain facts came to life. In What If, Volume 1, issues 26 through 27, released April through July of 1981, those two issues established that the Uranian colonists were actually descendants of the Eternals on Earth. Long story short, two brothers named Uranus and Cronus, they fought for control over the Eternals of Earth in a civil war. After Cronus won the victory, he banished Uranus and his loyalists into deep space. They came upon the planet Uranus and established a colony there. But Uranus himself, he insisted on trying to reclaim the Earth. So his faction split into two, with some of them staying behind on Uranus to maintain their colony. Now Uranus and his crew were attacked en route by the Kree and crash-landed on Saturn's moon named Titan. While they were there, they established a second colony. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Cronus was consumed by a cosmic energy experiment that empowered all the Eternals on Earth. And in order to avoid another civil war between brothers, Cronus' sons, Zuras and Alars, agreed that one would depart for space and another would rule the Eternal colony on Earth. Alars departed to space and found the Eternal colony on Titan and became Mentor, overseeing a second generation of Titan Eternals, including his sons, Starfox and Thanos. In Quasar, Volume 1, Issue Number 2, released in November of 1989, the Uranian Eternals were described in that issue as suicidal immortals. See, they had solved all the mysteries of the universe and saw no reason to continue on as a species. They supposedly summoned Horace Grayson to Uranus in order to study his mortality factor and arrange for their people to truly die again. After Marvel Boy left to go to Earth, they were able to crack the mortality factor, and then the embodiment of oblivion, known as Death Urge, arrived to shatter their biodome and allow them to die. Of course, that report was only made by Death Urge himself, who at the time was trying to convince Quasar to commit suicide, and it can be ignored or explained away considering later revelations. In Agents of Atlas, Volume 1, Issues 1 through 6, released October through March of 2006 to 2007, the original Marvel Boy, Bob Grayson, he returned with one of those "everything you know is wrong" retcons. You see, the native inhabitants of the planet Uranus, known as the Membrane or Aborigenoids by Bob Grayson, they allowed the Eternals to colonize their planet under two strict conditions. One, the Aborigenoids would feed off of any byproducts that were released by the Uranian colony. And two, the Eternals would swear to never to leave the planet, thus making it a penal colony. Feeling trapped, the Eternals eventually believed that they found a loophole in the agreement that would allow them to leave Uranus if they were invited somewhere else. And longing to return to the world of their forefathers, the Eternals, they welcomed Horus and Bob Grayson as part of a long-term plan to return to Earth. Bob was sent to Earth as their ambassador, Marvel Boy, in order to pave the way for Earth, inviting them home and freeing them from Uranus. Now, mind you, the Uranian Eternals, they're very controlling by nature and never truly trusted Bob to act in their best interests. Yeah, they influenced him in subtle ways by using the telepathic headband that he wore as part of his costume, but they also planned to replace him once they arrived back on Earth. And part of their plan was utilizing one of their own. A true-born Uranian Eternal of roughly Bob's age and appearance, named Thelius, he was surgically and psychologically altered in order to become a duplicate of Bob. In addition, he was constantly fed knowledge and Bob's memories through a link to Bob's headband back on Earth. Unfortunately, though, for the Eternals, the Aborigenoids did not appreciate the subtle loophole which allowed the Eternals to circumvent their agreement. So they were the ones who destroyed the colony from within and shattered the biodome, leading to the death of the colonists just as Marvel Boy was returning home to Uranus. The destruction of the colony had the side effect of freeing the telepathic inhibitors in his mind, the telepathic inhibitors on his headband, that is, revealing the full scope of the colonists' plans to Bob. As all Uranian technology died, Bob was stuck in the devastated colony and would have died as well in Uranus's poisonous methane atmosphere. However, the Aborigenoids, they took pity on him, since Bob was an entity outside of their arrangement with the Eternals, and so they incorporated him into their gelatinous mass and hive mind. Bob was altered physically and mentally to exist inside of their collective, and he remained there for decades until the Agents of Atlas reformed. Meanwhile, his doppelganger, Thelius, was launched from Uranus during the colony's destruction and remained in suspended animation in a capsule. However, the destruction of all Uranian technology caused this duplicate to awaken. His mind was damaged by the sudden shutdown of the telepathic feed he was getting from Bob Grayson's mind, and thus he had a garbled set of memories and recollections which led him to believe an inaccurate account of events. Dubbing himself the Crusader, he traveled to Earth to mistakenly avenge his father and his people. His wristbands overloaded and killed him, leaving just the bands behind. At the time, the bands were supposedly overcharged on solar energy, but later explanations indicated that those wristbands were actually the quantum bands. Yes, cosmic artifacts, and can only be used by select worthy wielders. Anyone who's not worthy to wield the quantum bands will be consumed by them, which is what happened to the Crusader. The quantum bands went from Reed Richards' custody to S.H.I.E.L.D., where one of their agents, Wendell Vaughn, donned them and eventually began operating as a superhero known as Quasar. That's what I have for right now. Tune in next week Just tune in next week. Later.